The day before yesterday, there was another report that was revealed. Apparently analysis had been done for the Department of Transport, again about what might happen on the Dover-Calais Straits. And in both cases, the reports said there would be significant delays, even under the best case, and even longer delays under the worst case. So I would just like to get from each of you, what is your assessment of what is likely to happen? What kind of delay are we going to be looking at from the 1st of November if the UK were to leave without a deal? I don't know who wants to go first. Mr. Hookham, do you want to start?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I think our assessment of the Yellowhammer report was that it actually offered a more severe scenario than even we were predicting, based on our understanding of the checks and arrangements that would be in place. I think it's very important, though, in this discussion, as I've said to the committee before, to distinguish between the direction of flows. So inbound imports into the UK are expected to have a relatively smooth ride because of the, should we say, pragmatic approach that we expect border officials to take to checks, and the arrangements that we understand are in place to move as much enforcement activity away from the border and further inland. The great unknown for my members, be they traders or hauliers, is exactly the position of and the enforcement strategy of French customs officials and other border officials. And it's although there are good arrangements in place in Calais, the port itself has organised itself in such a way to certainly increase its capacity to hold vehicles within the port that may require checks. It's impossible to foretell just how stringent those checks will be, what the intensity of those checks will be, and, if you like, the assumed risk factors that the French border officials assume on British imports as they see them. That, for us, is the single biggest unknown, and will cause determine the overall level of services that are able to run, simply because if ferries or shuttle trains are not able to turn around to discharge their vehicles and return from Calais back to Dover, then obviously the frequency of service drops, the overall capacity across the Dover Straits declines, and that's when you start to get the queues backing up into Kent and the need for Operation Brock and so on. Had
the government shared with you their thinking that we've seen revealed in the Yellowhammer report?
No, not on all of the details of the report itself. Obviously, we were familiar with many of the aspects that the report talked about.
Were you surprised that they hadn't shared it with you?
I was surprised that perhaps they hadn't thought to share some of the consequences that they had anticipated with the leading voice of logistics in the UK, simply because the biggest surprise in the report for us was a supposed threat to domestic fuel supplies. And clearly that affects all transport operators in the UK, not just those that travel between the UK and the rest of the EU.
Now, as I recall, that's partly to do with the impact of traffic congestion in Kent, which is something that's been warned about before because of the backing up the lorries that you've described. And then there was also a reference to the impact of the new tariff regime on a couple of refineries.
Yes.
So there were, two elements to that. What percentage of trucks would you anticipate trying to get into France are going to have the right paperwork on the 1st of November?
Oh, goodness. As many of them as we can possibly reach and communicate to, Chair. That's again, another unknown question. We have, as an association, commenced briefing sessions and developed our own briefing material to try to raise the awareness and B, the detailed knowledge of our members. This is our major focus at the moment. We obviously hope a deal will be struck and would much prefer a deal with a transition period, but accept the stated position of government, and therefore we are committed to reducing the impact of no deal on our members through informing them, training them, auditing them, as well as trying to influence the arrangements to be as
But do you have any
low-friction as
idea of
possible.
what percentage of them are geared up to have the right paperwork?
Not in a way that we can quantify that reliably for the committee.
No. Okay.
Yeah, so I agree with everything that's been said, and all the analysis that we've done with our members have been based on the briefings that we've had directly from government, and we've been working directly, particularly with DEFRA, every week since October last year, preparing for a no-deal Brexit. So we feel that our members are pretty well equipped to know what the delays are going to be. Then we can overlay that to the imports that we make at that time of year. And that time of year is the really crucial problem for retailers for two reasons. First of all, we are pretty close to peak imports at that stage, because obviously we've gone out of the UK growing season. We're importing our fresh produce in particular from Europe, and that all needs to come through Calais, and I'm sure we can talk about why fresh produce needs to move so quickly through Calais. The second problem is end of October is the really peak period for retailers in general. Everybody is gearing up for Christmas at that time. So everybody's logistics are already at full stretch. Warehousing space is at an absolute premium at that time. And it's very difficult to flex any extra space in terms of storage, because that's taken up already to account for the additional consumer demand that there's always like to be at Christmas. So for us, the end of October is probably the worst time to face a no-deal Brexit. And actually for us it might be interesting also to, this is kind of just the immediate problem for food retailers, because of course, as both speakers have already said, the UK is not going to operate checks, but it cannot operate on that system forever. We know from discussions with Food Standards Agency, for example, that things like meat and meat products will need to be certified before they come into the UK, which means they will be checked within 6 months. So then you've got border checks the other side of the channel, our side of the channel, and how we accommodate those, the bureaucracy that goes with it. There's one thing I just wanted to add to the SPS checks. On top of the SPS checks, there is a kind of a slightly added problem, in that you also have to comply with the European regulations in terms of transport of food. So things like heat-treated pallets are necessary to move food across borders, and at the moment this country doesn't have enough heat-treated pallets to move all the food that we actually export from the UK, from GB, and I include our exports into the Republic of Ireland, where many retailers have stores, as well as into Europe. So there's the checks issue going out, but there's also the physical infrastructure for us to be able to move the product as well.
So just on that specific point of the heat-treated pallets, has anything been done to try and increase the availability of those?
We are told that that is being increased.
By government?
Yes.
Are they stockpiling them?
No.
So how are they going to increase the supply?
My understanding is they've been talking to the manufacturers.
I think there's been an obvious opportunity for manufacturers to put into the market what are obviously pallets at higher cost. They require this additional treatment and certification. But I doubt if there has been time to build up sufficient supplies to meet this need. And certainly a lot of my members are telling me that this is they're having great difficulty sourcing these pallets and questioning whether or not this will actually be significant in the early days of a no deal. It's a very, very significant additional burden.
In other words, the problem is if French customs officials say, well, everything else is fine, but I'm terribly sorry, your pallets haven't been heat treated, so you're not coming in. And you'll only have enough if the people who are moving the stuff have got the pallets to put the food on at the moment it's required. Well, that's the point that we can pursue.